another This Week in Politics. I hope you've had a stellar week. This week I thought we would touch on a fair few things. One of them being, what's the nice way to put this? Some people should attempt to do their day job and some people should avoid photo ops. There's that and so much more. I'm so glad everyone is here, and I was hoping we would be able to break down this week. Now, if you notice, this week I stuck in the chats of the groups, the little link to click. So if you feel like at any point you'd like to jump up and say hello, I can put you in. You'll come up backstage and we'll have a chat. I think it's important to hear from you guys because without you, I don't have a platform. So, this week was extraordinary. If you didn't see Mr. Welding Man, oh my God, you have just missed out on something incredible. I've always thought that one of his cosplays would go wrong, but how wrong? I'm hoping he's seen an optometrist today. It was that terrible. I've never done these exercises. I have to be honest, the first time I used a drill, my husband looked at me with a lot of trepidation and said, oh my God, she's going to. Followed with, just don't hurt yourself at all. So, there is a lot going on lately. And I think that with all the excitement and the hype of the upcoming election, the weirdos going to Canberra, the pink eye crew going to Canberra, I think there has been a lot of hyperbolic language about what we do and when we do it. Particularly in politics, there's all this grandizing each other, you know, if you're on that side, well, and there seems to be a lot of this posturing as we get closer and closer to the election. Look, the pink eye crew may have thought that I wasn't paying attention and that I was solely focused on this election. Trust me, I seen you and your pink eye. You weirdos, stop messaging me. It's now beyond a point where I'm not going to agree with you. And I'm going to say publicly, yes, it's weird that you think that someone as small as me cares what you do. If you want to go and give each other crabs and pink eye and whatever, enjoy that. You know, you're pretty anti-science, so I wouldn't expect you to run to the doctors to go and get some medication for any of those diseases. But moving on, that's a negative point. So this week I want to talk about something interesting. Is Alan TUDGE going to move on? From what I'm seeing, no. He was supposed to move on and he hasn't quite made the nudge. And I think that he might need to. Because it's not looking good for a government to have seat warmers that aren't actually doing anything. And I think with the recent, you know, photo op incidents, let's call them, everything from let's wash a woman's hair weirdly to, oh my eye, is a little bit much. And if you didn't find that a little bit much, I'm sure you haven't seen all of them. That's just the ones that went badly. In between that, there's weird curries and ukulele playing and, oh, it's so cringeworthy. Where do you start? So, as funny as what all of that is, can I say with a seriousness, if they are serious about getting to electioneering, they're probably gonna not want to keep seat warmers. What do I mean by seat warmers? Well, Christian Porter isn't actually working. He's being paid a full salary. I've not seen him turn up to Parliament or much else. And he hasn't been available for any commenting. He's, and most of the LNP are not knowing how to respond. As we go through the night, I'm going to show you how little they really are responding. It's horrible at best. At worst, it's horrendous. So let's kick it off. Okay. So I want to show you Alan TUDGE faces a sack from the front bench over seeking to promote his lover while they were in an undisclosed relationship. Now, if anyone remembers, Mr. Barnaby Joyce did this exact same thing, and he managed to keep his amazing position as Deputy PM. That's not new. The Channel 10 journalist Peter Van Onselen said that the investigation into allegations by the ex-staffer Rachel Miller that TUDGE was emotionally and on one occasion physically abusive towards her had not supported her claim. Yeah, because PVO, is best buds with him, you don't expect him to be jumping out up and down over it. Scott Morrison ordered the investigation late last year when the claims were made, which the further earlier allegations against Mr. TUDGE and the ABC. Now, this is going to come up more and more. How these seat warmers are able to keep their job. These aren't small little scandals, they're huge. And any other time in politics, you would have been able to keep up. But because the ongoing stuff-up moments, it's very difficult to catch exactly how much they've got wrong. So I can assure you, by all measures, it's gone horribly, horribly wrong. Scott Morrison ordered the investigation after Miller made her claims. And the ABC's Four Corners program in 2020. So he's been in and out that long. It's not as if like this has been one of them, hey, a thing that's recent. This has been since 2020. TUDGE stood aside from his position as an education minister pending the outcome. Mr. Morrison has had that report since January. We're in February. I know he's low on numbers. I know that he needs the seat warmers to keep through to the next election. But it's an interesting predicament to be left in. A spokesman for Morrison said that the matter is still in process. It will be undertaken without prejudice to ensure it being dealt fairly. He said Stephanie Foster, Deputy Secretary in the Department of the Prime Minister Cabinet, had told the Senate estimate hearing on Monday she intended to release the report. It won't be. Spoiler alert, it won't be. The Prime Minister supports a view and approach of the spokesman. Foster told the hearing the department advised that if the government wanted to provide the report to TUDGE and Miller, the department should consult those who provided the inquiry with the confidential information. Foster said that the Commonwealth had told Miller that to the extent that this was within the Commonwealth's power to release the report, it would, but we had to be conscious that there were maybe a third-party concern to take into account. Asked in estimates hearing about Channel 10 reports, Senate leader Simon Birmingham said, "We're not going to respond to a news report in a way that undermines the rights of those who are engaged in the review process." There's an under review thing when the review is already in and someone has already given a decision based upon that. That's a very interesting take to have. We want to ensure that the review is concluded and that Mr. TUDGE and Mr. Miller receive the findings with Dr. Tom, which will be more substantive than the media report if accurate. Meanwhile, at Tuesday's government parties meeting, Morrison stressed that his troops must be focused in the run-up to the election. "You have seen me focused as I can be yet. We have a job to do and I'm going to do mine. You need to do yours and need to focus in on your seats." See, that's a weird statement to make. They're not doing any job. They're not, if you call doing a job making the worst legislation in history with photo ops, Sure, that's doing a job. Has continued its attacks on Anthony Albanese's credentials on national security. Government homed in on its legislation to make it easier to cancel visas of people convicted of serious crimes. Yeah, because they're just cancelling visas based upon who a Biobella family is. I mean, if the LNP want to go in on Albanese clearly saying that people with serious conviction should be denied entry, I have a family that I would like to show them that they're keeping in torturous conditions. The Biowella family in Queensland, that should be there. I'm telling you now, if this is the hill he wants to die on, oh boy, that's a sledging match I'm willing to enter. Speaking to 2SM, Morrison said Labor's Home Affairs spokesman Christina Keneally wants people to have who have been convicted of domestic violence to stay in the country because the judge gave them a soft sentence. What? Let me say that again. Labor's Home Affairs spokesman Christina Keneally wants people who have been convicted of domestic violence to stay in the country because the judge gave them a soft sentence. He said the government had cancelled 10,000 visas when it first came to office, 4,000 just since 2019 election. But criminals were using a loophole to help them stay when the government tried to cancel their visa, Morrison said. I tell you what, they want to do their cruelty measures are amazing, but sure. Said if a judge gave them a sentence of less than 2 years for crimes such as domestic violence, assaulting police officers, or concealing child abuse offences, date rape, even though the crime would be carried a 2-year sentence, they could appeal against the decision and cancel their visa. So he's wanting to jump the shark kind of thing. Before a judge has made their ruling, it sounds like, so once they've gotten their sentence of less than 2 years. Anthony Albanese likes to talk about, I imagine that's a swear word, whose side is he on? He's clearly on the side of criminals. No, he's not. No, he's not. If you're on the side of criminals, you're part of the LNP. Let's just be fundamentally clear about what we're talking about here. You know, I can send a 900-word text. No, you can't, Barnaby. I've seen it. Or do you want to talk about Jamland, how that isn't a thing that you should do to wetlands? I don't know. That'd be a pretty interesting conversation to have when you say Angus Taylor. Pretty criminal. I mean, you really, really, really want to be careful about what you're doing with certain parts of legislation. Because if Mr. Josh Frydenberg is a dual citizen and he has committed serious crimes with the LNP, who knows? Could be a rather happy accident. It'd be rather silly for these claims to be made in seriousness, and they shouldn't be trying to play this game. What they're doing is they're trying to pretend like Labor is somehow soft on criminals. No, if they were soft on criminals, they would allow them in the ALP, but they don't do that. You know, they kind of dob them in and, you know, Eddie O'Bead them, if you will. They don't sort of let it go on, or Craig Thompson them. You know, just to name a couple. But if you like to keep yours within the LNP crime family, I see. See, ALP have a thing where they see something wrong and they do something about it. It's a little weird when a party goes, no, ALP soft on criminals. Okay, that's a weird freaking statement to make when you clearly have shown this is how they do it every time. Whatever they know is their weak point, they just attack Labor with it with no basis for reality. And you look at them and go, okay, so what criminal are you hiding? What have they done? I don't know, Christian Porter. Is there another allegation that you'd like to talk about, buddy? Like, that's where I'm sort of going with this. What have you guys done that's sort of making me think you're being a little bit soft on a crim? You know, there has to be something. That's how I always look at these stories. Okay, the limitation we give Labor a way out, prevent being wedged. It wants to take support on the legislation. The legislation will be debated in the House of Representatives. The Senate is not sitting, so it could not be considered there before the brief budget sitting. See, now, they do these weird things, and they think Labor should do all these things. No. If they wanted to get rid of the criminals, they wouldn't have seat warmers like Alan Tudge. They wouldn't let Christian Porter sort of get around and do what he does. They wouldn't have Angus Taylor, you know. While they're talking about social media trolls, they wouldn't have him commenting on his own stuff. Good job, Angus. Good done. Good job. I mean, here's the thing. The very thing that they are always projecting is them in a nutshell. And you can't hide from this anymore. We see you, LNP. We see you. It's like a beacon of stupidity. Whenever you're like the kid that's like leaves a trail of crumbs behind them as they've grabbed the cookies from the cookie jar. And you're like, nah, they might lead to me, but here's the deal. It was really my sibling. And you're looking around going, where'd you get that from? But this only works if you have someone to back up that claim. And you've, say, got this dodgy paper that goes, yeah, fully was the sibling. Not only was it the sibling, they told the LNP to stand there doing it. It's this really bizarro moment where you can see the playbook. It's there. It's like a little show. And you're like, no, this is weird, right? You see it too. I'm not crazy. Like, they're gaslighting me into the idea that somehow whatever they're doing, they're not doing, and it's always everyone else. What? No. Let's rewind and let's look at where the facts take us. Not what Rupert Murdoch wants us to see with his dodgy little, I will say this and then we'll run with it. That's how it's sort of going. But don't take my word for it. Watch what comes out of their mouth. And then watch what they do. Because even Rupert Murdoch dobs on himself. You'll see this in more stuff as we move along. Next we're going to go to Shitstain Avi Yemeni. Why do I call him that? Because I'd like to... Because anyone who beats their wife shouldn't be given a platform. Shouldn't be promoted. And one of the worst things that Canada could have done was given him Rebel News. So if you don't know who Avi Yemeni is, school yourself up. It's a domestic abuser that beat his wife with a chopping board. That thinks that he's a legitimate YouTuber. You know, or news media. You know what I call him? A dude who can't hold his willy properly and beat his woman. It's an appalling thing. I would rather that he just take care of the kids that he has with that woman, rather than tramping around trying to promote the LNP and shake their grubby little hands and promote their anti-vaxxer insane lunatic stuff. And this is what I mean. You have this side that openly endorses this real criminality kind of thing like Avi Yemeni. And then you've got, oh yeah, but it must be Labor soft on criminals. What? No. You weirdo. But let me show you the story, because the other one that talks about it in depth is weirdly Sky News. But it gets weirder. Forget the background, that's weird in itself. Alright, he filed a lawsuit against a Twitter handle Now, he is 100% convinced that this lawsuit that he thinks that he's a genius on, which is what they all do, that he thinks will unmask who PR Guy is. Now, if you don't know, PR Guy is on Twitter and he says amazing takes on the LNP. Well, quite often the LNP have been saying things like, oh no, it must be part of Dan Andrews' crew because he's called PR Guy. And the thing is, it's an even weirder thing when you see that they've got these troll accounts like Angus Taylor, and then they're trying to introduce this anti-legislation to stop this kind of thing that the LNP are actually doing. This is what I mean. Look at what they're doing, and then look at what they're saying and trying to introduce. It's like they rat on themselves. So each time you hear them say, hey, that guy's up to something dodgy, you know they've done something dodgy. Anonymous Twitter troll and ardent Dan Andrews backer PR Guy. See how Sky News puts it out there? Could be forced out of the shadows pending a successful action against a social media giant to reveal the account's identity. Now, doing this is not a good idea for the LNP, I mean, because they've got a lot. Go in any LNP chat, and I guarantee you that isn't just a troll farm. They physically buy the trolls. I remember looking back in 2015. If you don't remember 2015 real well, here's a brief recap. Tony Abbott bought a troll farm and a like farm in India. And each time someone would say something, you would get clapped and moved out of his chat. That's it, you were gone. You couldn't make any response the moment you said something truthful. Now, this is back in 2015. So this is like being this ever-rising thing. But here's where they get to shoot themselves in the foot. They take an action like this against PR Guy who has legitimate takes against the LNP. Boy, you could use a heavy hand against them. Okay. Rebel user Avi Yemeni will use the courts to attempt to... He's not news. Let's just be clear. He's a guy pretending to be news. He's very biased and very wrong. I would never purport to be news. He does not have a journalist degree or anything. Of Twitter troll PR Guy, arguing that the account was reminiscent of communist-style propaganda. Mr. Yemeni is set to take the defamation action... I'll start that again. Mr. Yemeni is set to take the defamation action against the people behind PR Guy. But Twitter has refused to unveil the identity unless ordered by a court. Lawyers for Rebel News and Mr. Yemeni filed proceedings in the federal court on Tuesday to compel the Twitter to release the name and information of the user as well as the information relating to similar accounts. Now, why would Sky News make a thing out of who PR Guy is? Because the moment that because he's quite popular, for one. Two, PR Guy said something most people won't. Not only is the LNP corrupt, but here's how. And he would leave the breadcrumbs and you could follow it quite simply. And three, he does say things that most people aren't aware of at that point. So he does get information that some people haven't gotten yet, which is why they assumed that he was some sort of inside source of Dan Andrews. But this is why if you hear PR Guy's response, he's like, no, bring it on. I want this lawsuit to show this. So just in time for the election to show that I was never part of any, part of whatever political campaign for either side. I just really hate Scott Morrison. So that's his response to that. Mr. Yemeni told Sky News guaranteed that the federal court would force a tech giant to reveal the identity due to his intentions to file defamation proceedings against the holder of the account. Two problems with doing this. One, it's unprecedented. So you need to set a precedent. And if this is the precedent you want to send within the courthouse, you are now, it's like writing over a new law. You're saying anonymity is no longer guaranteed within the social networking premise. So most companies have a thing about you not having a social media account that can talk about the company in any way and that sort of thing. So there are like legitimate reasons why you need to be outed in some cases, but that's normally a company in style kind of thing. Now what they're talking about is you say something naughty on Twitter, they want to go after you and they want to know not only who you are, but they want to be able to file a writ against you. This is a brand new precedent. This has never been done before. Not only have they never ever revealed this before, but this was attempted in the US. There were several people that were going against Trump in the US. So this is where Avi Yemeni gets all of his brilliant ideas from. The Rupert Murdochs of the world. Twitter told Rebel News it would reject the request to release the user information except by a valid legal process. The fact that an individual being represented by a lawyer does not constitute a valid legal process. We would require, for example, a court order to subpoena. Twitter said no. Oh, stuff is falling. Now, this is the reason that that's so big is because Twitter has famously, like Apple iPhone, refused to aid and abet government in certain moments. One of the most notorious ones was there was this incident with an extremist that were going to commit a crime, and the police were pretty convinced that they left a mobile phone behind and they wanted it unlocked. Now this would have made precedent to do this, to unlock that iPhone and get it done. The police prosecutor in this case did not get that request granted. To this day, Apple iPhone do not, I repeat, do not hand over your passwords willy-nilly. They do not do that. This sets up a whole new legal precedent, and one that I find scary, because what Avi is essentially wanting to do is sue over his fees being hurt. That's essentially the whole basis to his claim. But I digress. PI guy gained prominence in 2020 and has drawn the ire of many Victorian and Australian political circles. No, he drew the ire of people that were doing the wrong thing. So you were an anti-masker, you're an anti-vaxxer, you want to promote stupidity, he's going to tell you you're an idiot. And if that hurts your fees, sorry buddy, that's not a reason to sue, Avi, you freaking twat waffle. Okay, Mr. Yemeni said the account had now risen to such popularity it had become an authority on Victorian political discourse. Nope. That would be the guy that gets a Sky News interview that got a Rebel News outlet from Canada to promote you, which is far right. And that would be to the point where they try and legitimize you through, I don't know, stupid takes like, I have a voice and a microphone, so therefore suing Dean Andrews to let me into press galleries with no journalistic skills at all. Congratulations, idiot. Anyone can talk about the news. I'm doing it right now. It doesn't mean I can rock up to Parliament House like I'm an independent arbiter of knowing what to do. There is a real job to be done. I have studied journalism on a small scale. What we're talking about here is on a large scale with a crew and background checkers and everything else, fact checkers. You can't just walk into Parliament House, wherever you are, and then, you know, in each state, and then decide I get to ask a weird ass question. You're not Craig Kelly, asking are there sonic boom, radio waves to affect people. That's what happens when you elect an idiot, people. He really wants the political discourse to be about him, and he's jealous of PR guy. It's reminiscent of communist-style propaganda. He wouldn't know what communist-style propaganda is. How does he just get to say it? Like, how do you get to the point where you're just allowed to just say things like verbal diarrhea and not prove it? Okay, Mr. Yemeni, I'm going to put it to you like this. I know I'm a small YouTuber, but here's the deal, bucko. You can prove it to me anytime you like how PR guy is some communist. Bet you can't. Like I said on your Twitter, dude, you can pretend to be anyone you like with a microphone. But until you're taking care of your ex-wife and her children, your voice should be mute. But instead, you're still a harassing little twat-hole. So, no. This is so typical of these nut jobs. They don't take care of their own business at home, but they think they should be in on everyone else's. They basically defamed anybody that had a legitimate criticism. The danger was how popular and what the authority they became in the political discourse of Victoria. Projection much, Avi Yemeni? Projection much? Do you want to talk about the... Do you know that there was an open rally against you, Mr. Avi Yemeni? Do you know that when the BLM rallies were happening in Melbourne, they openly, while you were walking up to people, they had chopping boards for you? My God, the left are brilliant. They know how to troll you better. And that's what insults you to the very core. They know who you are. You're not a man, you're a mouse, trying to uncover people because your fees were hurt. My God. Okay, they hold one of the most powerful political accounts in the country on Twitter. Not true, but do digress. I've looked at your sub count and everything else. I know how Twitter works. If you don't, cool. But I've figured it out. What you do is you get a certain amount of subs. Once you get over 1,000, they start paying you. And they pay you for whatever bullshit you put out there. Mr. Yemeni, I challenge you on your bullshit. YouTube is paying him to be a person that is telling them things. Like disinformation things. Like Joe Rogan. He has no business telling people what to do. He is playing Dr. YouTuber. These people have no business doing it. In a court document filed Tuesday, lawyers for Mr. Yemeni detailed the defamatory imputations made against Rebel News journalist PR guy account. Oh, did your fees get hurt, Mr. Yemeni? Did they? Oh, poor little boy. And then did PR guy say mean things to you? Oh, you better sue then, like every other LMP. The allegations include that Mr. Yemeni was a threat to Australia's national security. Notice how they just get to say it? No evidence, no backup. They just get to say it. This is how outrageous this whole thing is. Sky News doesn't ask how. Okay? What context was this said under? The allegation include that Mr. Yemeni was a threat to national security and was a criminal and caused and contributed surging COVID-19 cases that extended the lockdown. Now, when you're openly having a anti-lockdown rally, when you're openly saying that people shouldn't wear masks, when you're running around and making sure the lockdown stayed in longer, the longest state to stay in lockdown, and you're like out there running around like an idiot going, no, I'm anti-lockdown. But even those people hated him. In a since deleted tweet from October last year, PR guys said Mr. Yemeni had been blamed for his role in the far-right activism, which led to the surge in cases. keeping Melburnians locked down longer and destroying their hard work. Tell me which part of that's wrong. If anyone paid attention to what he did, to what Mr. Yemeni did, to what Chopping Basher did, I'm not going to entertain him as some man. A man doesn't do the things he does. He's a crybaby. So he openly did try and promote these anti-lockdown things. He was doing it for popularity. He was doing what all these other idiots do. It's a grift. They make a lot of money out of saying the wrong things. I bet you he'd also be promoting that weird drug that they keep talking about instead of approved vaccines. Mr. Yemeni said the Twitter account's anonymity meant that it was held responsible for any that it was not held responsible for any of its defamatory comments. Right. Tell me which part you've been held accountable for the rally that you held, where people openly got sick, some may have died. Tell me which part of an anti-masking rule. But since we're on about suing people and doing things like this, I think that you should be held accountable, Harvey. Since you're offended that someone said that you were promoting this kind of stuff, you realize that this opens up what's called discovery. Now, for those of us who don't understand how the legal process works in this case, I'm going to give you a small tutorial. When one person sues another person, each have this moment of discovery. Now, this will open up this account if it goes to court. It won't be revealed until the very end. But what this account can do is it can go to a court and say, here's my evidence of what he did, and here's why I should stay anonymous, and here's how I can prove what he did. Here's the rallies that he held, here's the things that he said, here's how he stirred up a nation. Prove me wrong. See, this sort of will bring to light more of what Harvey did. I cannot tell you the amount of people in the LNP who do the same thing. I'm going to sue you. Okay, buddy, cool story. But here's the thing, discovery is a funny thing. It can come to bite you when it comes up that actually what people were saying about you is true. I'm sure that his lawyer would have advised him of that at that point. But Harvey isn't the brightest cookie in the tin, see? And he's all about those clicks and views. He wouldn't know really how big that discovery file can be. It can go back right from the pandemic started. Hell, if he wants to, he can go back to anything that he deems it defamatory, and the accused the accused person that is being considered defamatory can also bring up other articles. My word, Mr. Yemeni, let's be clear about what you're doing. This works in his favor. Whoever this gentleman is, this definitely works in his favor. See, the other weird flex that you have is that his claim is, well, he must be part of Dean Andrews. Well, why? Because you have such close links to the LNP that it must be. See what I mean about this projection thing? They're so dumb that they think that we can't see what they're doing. I mean, you don't think we can pull up the photos of you shaking several Liberal MPs? Mr. Yemeni? See, projection is amazing. We see you and we raise you, you're an idiot. Okay, it hasn't been helpful because you don't actually know who you're talking to, and that person is held responsible for anything they say. He have defamed many people, I'm sure, and there'll be a number of defamation suits coming after the proceedings finish. No. It only works if you act. Do you know that you're going to have to prove that he defamed you? You're going to have to prove damages. Did you not hold a rally that was like an anti-lockdown rally? Did you not spread COVID at these rallies? I mean, it's going to be a pretty bad thing to try and prove that you didn't do those things. Mr. Yemeni, I put it to you simply. You're using a court to humiliate yourself. I will do that for free. You're paying a lawyer to do that. I will do it for free. You may figure out who PR guy is, but my word, I will humiliate you for free. This is the most grandest thing he ever could have done. This is funny. This is funny. It's very hard to hold an anonymous... okay, the account has been powered by the fact that 2 years they've been anonymous. Right. Recapping the sensational failed campaigns against Dan Andrews. See, this is dictator, China's simp, liar, corrupt, drunken, power, bully, misogynist. What will be next? See, at what point do you be like, he owns you? Dude, PR guy lives rent-free in your head, and you can't handle it, Mr. Yemeni. I know, the suit has been reportedly filed for federal court. Finally proved that I work for Dan Andrews. There's even a fundraiser. Oh yeah. If you don't know, Avi Yemeni does fundraise on a lot of this stuff. He never tells anyone where the money goes. It's just this weird thing that he does. Look up on all of his websites, right? He's always got these weird fundraisers. It's super interesting to watch. What's a good way for me to explain this? Okay, so when he was doing his anti-lockdown stuff, he was fundraising to run the anti-lockdown rallies. He was fundraising to sue Dan Andrews. So he fundraises off this stuff. So he makes money out of humiliating himself. Suppose there's always a clowning career for Mr. Yemeni. He's an idiot. Which means, okay, to cover the costs, what this means is people who don't like Dan Andrews are paying money to actually prove I don't work for him. I mean, that's pretty funny. This is where we are. That's pretty funny. No other time has satire ever become such a non-needed entity. If you follow this well enough, you're always a bit like, you thought this through, right? Like, there was some thinking going on. You know, you got your money, but you won't have your dignity after this. I tell you what, Mr. Yemeni, for a special fee, I'll take any chopping boards out of your house, and I'll humiliate you online. Fair deal, right? You want to be a public person? We'll play. I can play on the same field as you. But I don't do it through grifting people. I wouldn't ask anyone for money. Oh, and secret little tip. You can't run around pretending like you're a legitimate person on these little platforms and then go, give me money. It's a little weird. If you want to legitimize yourself, you don't go doing weird stuff like that. Okay, so turns out he's not very liked either. So check out Mr. Yemeni's. I'm going to humiliate him until he wants to be stupid. Cool. You win stupid prizes whenever you enter these sorts of competitions. The uncomfortable relationship between Rebel News and Australia's anti-vaccine protests. Now, this seems kind of funny at the start, but then you realise an idiot's talking to an idiot, and the idiots are all telling each other to fuck off. That's how it went down. Swearing and all. That's literally how this exchange went. It's funny. Again, he's his own comedy skit. He's his own satire. These people are have their own pink eye weirdo nightmares. Okay, last week near the marble-clad walls of Australia's largest library, a perplexing confrontation broke out between anti-vaccine protesters and the far-right news outlet Choice Rebel News. One of the convoys to Canberra stood with Avi Yemeni, Rebel News, a key figure in Australia, as a small crowd and police watched on. Oh, come on, it's funny. It's funny. These people, they just, what are the police gonna do? I'm just arresting everyone. The stupidity level is too high. The irony. They did, the ones who knew who he was, they thought he was like a legitimate, news person, and they're like, no, I'm not going to be intimidated by you, Rebel News, or anyone else. The protesters said, we didn't want you going up to people. Others chimed in to defend Yemeni. He's on our side, one said. Some began to chant Avi out, before the version of the incident which Rebel News says was selectively edited to delete the chant. Avi stay cuts out. No, dude. It only went one way, and it wasn't in your favour. This is what I mean. You're a walking group of idiots around another walking group of idiots. Two idiots meet up in a bar. This happens. Pink eye and stupidity. It's hilarious. It's hilarious when they say to me, take me seriously. Okay, dude, I took you seriously, and this is the end result. You idiots. The scene was jarring, not least because Rebel News positioned itself as an ally of the protesters and their lone voice in an industry otherwise uniformly hated. Okay, watch this.
Leave him.
I'm trying super duper hard. It's hard. Come on. This is, I want someone up here laughing with me. This is funny. This has to be like, if this wasn't real life, we'd be all like, when people look back at this, there's going to be like, was this real or were they kidding? No, it's real.
Stay.
I agree.
Don't start turning this into like you're getting intimidated by you. Because I'm not getting intimidated by you, Rebel News, or anybody else. Okay? We don't want you going out to people. Hold on. Okay.
This man, he's on our side. He's on our side.
You see the fear in all his eyes. He knew when crazy's hanging around crazy, you never know what you're gonna get. No.
Okay, so he's upset one person and he's apologised.
Yeah, that's how well that went for Avi, but it gets even funnier. But I mean, this is the level of IQ you expect. You know, you kind of go like, oh, you thought this was the movie you wanted to, this is the hill you wanted to die on. Okay, buddy, let's go with what made you the bright spark of the evening. Okay, it speaks to Rebel News' uncomfortable position within a convoluted ecosystem of such protests. The crowds gathered in Canberra, populated by desperate collection of sovereign citizens. Now, if you don't know and you're not abreast on who the sovereign citizens is, it's I have rights, you don't, and the laws don't apply to me, only to you. So I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever I say sticks to you, and whatever I want just reflects off me. Basically the 5-year-old version of that. It's I don't need a driver's license to drive on the road. I'm traveling, goddamn you. No, you fully need a license. Traveling is you can travel any mode you want to. You have to do it legally. And yes, you agree to that when you get your driver's license. You absolute weirdos. That's the basic run of the Solve Sid movement. I've been following them for a while. There's one that wanted to arrest a judge. It was funny, but also frightening. And of course, it came from Melbourne. Just to add that in there. So, like Arvie, they've got this mix of super progressive people in Melbourne and then the extremists that's there, and you're looking at them going, oh, that escalated quickly. Okay, wellness advocates. So, what the wellness advocate is, all right, let me just debrief you on who that is. That's those, I don't vaccinate. I'm a naturopath. Naturopathy can be great. It's shown some elements of it are good. But you can't use it to, I don't know, like treat cancer or many other things. There's just no evidence. Sometimes it will help you with a bit of a messed up bowel system, and it can help you with some healing. But they've made ridiculous claims over the years, and they need to be called out for their crap. And now they're huge on the anti-vaccine. You basically should say that the anti-vaccine and the wellness advocates go hand in hand. These groups are predominantly on the same football field. Some do disassociate with the other, but it's rare. Like I do think some of it can be good. It's the same as, look, let me touch again on this self-sid thing. Like, you do have rights. You do have rights, right? Like, today I was reporting an incident to police that was real. They were asking me for my ID. You didn't need my ID for that. There's a basic rule to this, is that you can report a crime anonymously. And they wanted not only all of my details, but they wanted my driver's license number when I was not driving. It's not a thing. You don't get to overreach. And because my local police station, for some weird ass reason, was closed, here we are. So I ended up calling up that police link, which didn't help much either. It's like, was this really weird moment? So there are, in these fringe little things, they say, they take what is a legitimate issue and then they turn it into some weird thing. Conspiracy theorists, doomsday preppers, oh, those are interesting people. They're crazy too. Doomsday preppers, talk to those people. They talk about having guns and tons of canned food. One interaction was so extreme that I got a little bit scared. And I know I look like the sort of woman that can hold her own most of the time. But no, it got legitimately scary. It started to go... Okay, I was visiting a relative that's sort of in these circles. And I was away from home about 1,000 kilometers. So, and as this conversation was taking place, I had positioned myself over towards a table where my keys were, because it was getting to that point where I was like, maybe I should drive home, you know. And I had one of my children with me on this incident. And had she not been with me, maybe I would have held my gumption a little bit better. But I was like, no, you're legit saying scary things like you can kill people. like you're going to legitimize killing people in some sort of weird doomsday prepper moment. It was scary. And United Australia Party supporters and other fringe political groups. You got to understand, they are fringe, but they're saying things... Well, how they get popular is they say things that they think people want to hear, even if it's not the correct information. Some welcome Yemeni as a kind of cult hero. Others accused him of trying to monetize their movement, which he is. He's openly, they were right about that. That's the thing, you can't take everything they say and then say, oh, everything they say is wrong. Not true. Avi Yemeni is openly asking for donations for all of this stuff. You can look up his webpage. He openly asks for donations for all of it. So he isn't just rocking up there because he believes in the movement. No, my guess is, truthfully, they know he rocked up there without a mask on, so one would have to hope that, and if he crossed state lines, one would have to hope that he's vaccinated. One would have to ask, is someone asking? Despite their mix, quick incident in Coles I had. I walked in there and I seen people walking around without a mask. Many of you know I've had my own issues with COVID. I was like, aren't you worried that, you know, this is happening? They're like, oh, that's a police mandate. And I said, cool, I can walk in here nude. It's a police mandate. No, dude, you cannot be stupid. And no, I'm not going to walk in there nude, but it was funny to say at the time. No one wants to see this. It's not a thing. And they're like, but that's criminal. And I'm like, you're not understanding. The mask mandate is a law too. It's the same as running around nude. If you're like, you can't be nude, you can't be in here without a mask either. You need to take that just as seriously. I don't think he was too impressed with me. Look, I've experienced this thing. It's not, you know, you wake up one morning and you're a little bit sick. No, this was like full on hacking my little lungs up for all that they were worth. I've taken up enough time on my personal business though. The anti-vaccine and anti-lockdown protests, including last year's Melbourne rallies, have been a boom for Rebel News. See, they are making a lot of money out of this. Do not be fooled. These idiots are making money out of idiots. Consider it an idiot convention where a lot of money is circulating. It has posted an avalanche of social media comment about the convoy, amplifying its across the audience of hundreds of thousands across Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Telegram, and Instagram. Now, if you don't know what Telegram is, we'll do a quick FYI on it. Telegram is basically the Twitter hurt my fees. Facebook is supposed to be fake news, apparently. And Telegram is not. Okay. In return, audience have grown exponentially, taking its social media following beyond Australia's well-established traditional news mastheads and its ability to raise funds. You see that part there? That there is the important part. Avi Yemeni wouldn't make a clown of himself if he was not paid to do so. No, I do not think most people do it for free, but Avi's not that stupid. He's stupid, but not that stupid. Look at his website. He promotes everything on a donation sort of kilter. On Twitter, a less used platform for most anti-vaccination groups, Rebel News Australia dominated Canberra on the convoy discourse. Analysis provided by the Guardian Queensland University of Technology Digital Media Centre shows two accounts. The international Rebel News account, Australia quickly became the two largest disseminators among 32,000 tweets attached to the two main Canberra convoy hashtags. Yeah. Idiots following idiots. Check notes. Sheeple move from one field to the next field, and hate to break it to you, buddies, that's what you do with sheep. You move them from one field, like, I don't know, the front of Canberra, and then you say you go to another ground. You know, with greener pastures where you can all give each other pink eye and tell each other to watch your children. You absolute weirdos. They are by far the biggest drivers of amplifier of it, Timothy Graham. I think you can say without the shadow of a doubt. Glad to contribute to some data analysis commentary article. This coordinated retweet clearly, oh geez, something happened, it broke. By the biggest producers and amplifiers of the Canberra convoy contingent on Twitter. Oh yeah, he did it. See this? This is a sign Avi knows how this works. When all this is said and done, there will always be an idiot to promote idiot things to do. Remember that kid in school that's like, we should skip school together. It sounds like a brilliant idea. And you're like, that little voice that goes, no, I don't think we should do that. You're the person who's telling you the sensible thing to do, they're considered not cool. The kid going, no, we so should do that. It's awesome. They're the kid that gets promoted. That's the creation of Avi Yemeni. On Facebook, where Rebel News Australia is followed by 158,000 users, regular posts about the convoy have helped to drive up the interactions and grow its audience. In a week, February 5, Rebel News Australia interactions spiked to 95,000, almost double the week prior and triple the page weekly average for the past year, driving 4% growth and following, with a trend similar through more muted witnessed during the September rallies in Melbourne, where Rebel News was ambiguous. Now, remember what PR guy said? Yeah, Discovery's gonna prove you did what he said you did. Hey, dickhead, give it a go. We'll see what Discovery gives you. The Melbourne rally fueled a record growth for the page, delivering on 44,000 new followers in a single week. In September, a growth of more than 64%. Well, would you look at that? I wonder if Arvin would like that in Discovery, on what he told them. I wonder if the court would allow him to play the videos of that kind of Discovery and the stupid things he said. That would contribute to, I don't know, longer lockdowns and stuff like that. Without providing specific detail to Facebook, has confirmed The Guardian that it has removed some Rebel News COVID content for breaching misinformation and harm policies. Gotcha! Trapped. Dude, you make the case so simple. So Facebook had to go, hey, Rebel News, you might be saying some really bad things about COVID. That's not true. What did PR guy say? You're promoting misinformation. Seeing a correlation here is stupid. Discovery is going to eat him alive, but it's done little to dampen the rise. Since creating Facebook page in September 2020, Rebel News has built a greater following on the platform than Hobart Mercury, Newcastle's Herald, and the Canberra Times. Now that's why he's doing it. Because he thinks, ta-da, I'm the new news. No, you're the new idiot follower. Every idiot needs a leader, you know, like this. An idiot needs someone to follow rather than someone to... They think this is their messiah. They're treating him as such in some circles. On Yemeni's YouTube content, which has established following prior to him joining Rebel News, the surge from Melbourne protests was huge. He grew his subscriber count, which, okay, so if you don't know how YouTube works, for every 1,000 subscribers, they give you money. He's up to 54,000, now up to 73 in October, according to analytics tool Social Blade, and it's a tool over 679,000. Okay, now that's just the sub count. Have a look at the view count. That stuff, that analytics means that they're YouTube is paying him to tell them lies. And it's going to come out, and this discovery will show that. His monthly video views have peaked at 17 million. That's my point. He's at 17 million views in October and have to again surge at almost 15 million in January. Staggering increase from 1.9 million views he received in August. That's where we're at. So each and every time we're being told, hold on, what did he do? This is what he did, and it's not new. Many of the Rebel News posts link back to donation pages or fundraising campaigns to its operations in Rebel News report about GoFundMe cutting off donations to the Canadian convoy protesters. For example, Rebel News included an option for readers to donate to the outlet. It's making them money. And idiots hand it to them. The right wing is infiltrated with a lot of money. You know why the left wing not so much? Because it's a lot harder to give when you're doing the right thing. Like if you ever notice that a charity organisation struggles a lot more than the big rich events that you will see, like the big rich charity events, and it's normally a charity for someone they personally know, like a charity ball to get someone elected. They tend to rake in more money than any other good charity, $1 million in a day. My good friend Annette works for the St. Vincent's de Paul. And everyone should be part of a group that does stuff like that. Everyone. And they should give handily to those groups. But why they don't is because and why rich people don't is because they think that poor people deserve to be poor, and rich people don't pay their right tax rate. Why would they give to the charities? Because they want to cut poor people off more, because they can hire them at ridiculously low wages. They're in the middle of it, and I think that's really happening. They're trying to leverage and exploit what's going on to build a brand, to get clout, and to try and get donations. And the crab's scrambling up the pot. Now, here's what happens to these groups, right? If you're not following a group like Right Side Media, or which is a very Trump-affiliated news, OAN, or Newsmax, right? We already have the data to show this is not a good idea. Eventually, it turns into, whoopsie, that was a big mistake. And then lawsuits follow. Hashtag Dominion and Smartmatic. Now, if you don't know what happened there, Smartmatic and Dominion are suing people like OAN, Fox News, and Newsmax. Why? Because they spread disinformation. One day they just go a step too far, because they made ridiculous claims like that Trump had really won the election. They always go a step too far. These idiots went one step too far. At the convoy to Canberra, what I affectionately call it, the Pink Eye Gathering, was basically Moderna darts were being shot at people. Now, if Moderna was smart, they would sue the asses off them and they wouldn't do it again. And if I was a supersonic noisemaker person, I would be looking at Craig Kelly and then going, hey, you're going to make a claim about stupid things. Let's see how you like it. The rebel fundraising from the protest in itself has become a source of contention among some of those gathered in Canberra. In another video from the protest site, Yemeni was filmed afar by an anti-vaccination group streaming live videos to its followers. He was a guy that bagged us out 2 years ago. He really disliked us, the narrator says. But he started going to our protests, and then he started making a lot of money from our protests. I haven't made a cent from our protests. See, even the crazies know another crazy. They know this. They see it a mile off and they're like, no. Rebel News says Yemeni is on a fixed salary and has not profited from the coverage of any individual topic. I call liar. For one, he has a Teespring website. If you don't know what that is, I dare you to look it up. He sells merch, which is he's making money out of the merch. He also has Patreons, which is something else he makes money out of from YouTube. Oh, and don't forget, he also makes money for every 1,000 views he gets off YouTube. See, already discredited Rebel News. It's not hard, people. These people think that people like me that are smaller, that wouldn't know what's going on. See, and I don't even have all those rinky-dink credentials to prove that Arby's an idiot. I can do that for free. Okay. Misinformation, the Canadian origins of Rebel News. In September, an anti-vaccination protest in his country grew. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau fielded questions from the representative of Rebel News. Rebel News' inclusion as leaders' debate had been a point of contention. The organisation was initially blocked from attending, but sued the government and to force its way in. Arvey did the same and was still rejected on appeal. Why? Because he's not a real journalist, and Dean Andrews had every right to reject him. Yeah, if he's there asking a question, he'll make Rachel Baxdale look like she might have a brain and ask a decent question. But instead, it's the idiots feeding off one another. And yes, Rachel, I've seen all of your weird takes at Dean Andrews. It was weird watching you. The questions were so bizarre in attacking Dean Andrews. People like Arvey didn't need to be there. Rachel had their back. When Rebel News questioned the Prime Minister about the episode, Trudeau did not hold back. The reality is, organisations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on science around vaccines is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science, Trudeau said. God, I love him. Frankly, I won't call it a media organisation, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarisation that we're seeing in this country. Oh my God, I think I am a little Trudeau lover. There you go. He said, it's everything I wanted our Prime Minister to say. But he won't, he'll go, see the states. That's literally what he said. He's a dumbass. Rebel News Resources Influence, derived from its Canadian base, was founded in 2015. Led by controversial Canadian figure Ezra Levant, and traffic to its website remains overwhelmingly North American. Not too popular in the old Canadian country where you're from, and bit weird, in a place that has a higher education level. You're not too popular. It's a little bit funny. I mean, America does pencil drives for kids. For Christ's sake, of course their education system is broken. As everybody's, they have school shooting drills. Of course it's a bad place to go, no, I'm getting educated and it's great. As it rose to prominence, Rebel News openly embraced its figures from the far right. Contributors included Tommy Robinson, of course it did, the founder of English Defence League. Katie Hopkins, she got sued and now you don't hear from her anymore. Proud Boy founder Gavin McGuinness. Insurrectionist. See, classy fellows, aren't they? They've all got such wonderful histories of stupidity. During the 2017 Charlottesville rallies, then Rebel News correspondent Faith Godley spoke positively about white nationalists and the views on race and the JQ slang for Jewish question. Oh yeah, they're super anti-Semitic. Guess what Harvey is? Jewish. And he also talks about how he was able to do awful thing to Palestinian children. If you're wondering, he openly talks about doing the worst thing you can do to children. They're no longer alive, I'll put it like that. Godley has but they need someone like ALBO to legitimize them. It's like when they get someone like, I think his name was Herschel Walker. They get their, or Diamond and Silk for the Americans. Diamond and Silk will tell you critical race theory is bad. Why is it bad? Because the other white people said it was bad. They have no legitimacy to their thing. They're black women that openly promote anti-black people rhetoric. This is how they do it. This white nationalist movement is very anti-Semitic. I'm amazed that ALBO would take their money, but money is money, right? It's like how Ben Shapiro loves to be on the right, but it's not too comfortable with some of the things that come out about what he really thinks. Or Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin, who is an openly gay man who would take their money while knowing that the group that he's taking it from are very homophobic. It's an incredibly sad thing. The moment she confessed that she'd secretly appeared on the anti-Semitic podcast, I fired her, he told The Guardian. No, you know what happened? They knew. They all knew. For the white nationalists, there's this thing, if you don't follow what they do, they all have this thing like, whenever you ask, are you a white nationalist? They go with deny, deny, deny. Right? They knew who she was. If you're not sure if they knew, have a look at their history. They are notorious. They still hire these same sorts of people. Weirdos. So then they hire people like ALBO to go, see, we are very Jewish friendly. You found one guy that's Jewish that promoted killing people. Fantastic. After surviving the blowback from the 2017 events, which prompted the boycotts by advertisers in Canada's Conservative Party, the pandemic provided an opportunity for Rebel News to shift its focus to anti-vaccination and anti-lockdown causes. The Canada convoys, which inspired the Australian iteration, have shown the outlet's ability to harness hate for traditional media amongst anti-vaccine, anti-lockdown protesters. Late last month, Levin was greeted by a rapturous crowd when he addressed the convoy protesters outside Parliament in Ottawa. I want to tell you that excites the most about the crowd, he said. I see a lot of cameras and a lot of independent journalists because people say what we do about the media. You say you become the media. You mean that you become the... media has its own issues. You have a look at Rupert Murdoch. He's a tool for disinformation. Fox News is huge for this. But you don't become an independent journalist with no qualifications to then do the very thing that you're fighting against and create your own fake news outlet and then campaign on it and ask for money. It's... I don't think they've met the word irony. It's incredible. The Canadians accessing Rebel News website has increased by 70% in the last month alone. A traffic analyst tool has found. Australians now make up 13% of the traffic to the website, the third most of any country. The Australian audience to its website has grown by 11% in a single month. This will fizzle out. It always does. It's a little bit like when people say to me, isn't Pauline Hanson, a big threat to our democracy? I say, well, have a look at where she's polling now. Have a look at it. Have a look at where Palmer's polling now. For every idiot that's spawned, there's another idiot that will replace it. But they're never popular for long because they always end up screwing it up for themselves. One sec. Elise Thomas, an open source for intelligence analyst, with the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, says that anti-vaccination and anti-lockdown communities are well suited for groups like Rebel News to reinvigorate their following. And the thing about these kind of fringe communities is that they're often really hyper engaged in communities. They're not getting the context of anywhere else in their life. It's a lot of people online, and they're it's not a lot of people, it's a small little group that says a lot of loud things. That's how it works. And it's less than 1% of the population if you have a look at the true value to it, right? Less than 1% of the voting population truly follow this stuff. But because they're so loud and obnoxious, you have to hear them. You have to hear them when they get pink eye. I mean, that's how it works, isn't it? You go to a rally saying, we don't want your sticking jab, but we'll get pink eye instead. It'll never not be funny. I'm amazed that I haven't seen Friendly Geordies like just pink eye the whole lot. They should make a band, the Pink Eye Convoy. Graham describes a protest as a sure thing in terms of engagement for groups like Rebel News. It's not content that actually has any coherent ideological driver. Actually, it does. It has, let me just contradict that. They do have a coherent message. It's done in repetitiveness. How they do it is they just reiterate the same thing, so it drives a message home. They have like this sovereign citizen / anti-vaccine sort of script, and they must follow the script. Some of them give it away by saying follow the script. Other ones, that gives the game away, right? You watch them and they're funny. But then there's ones that don't, and that's, yeah, even funnier. Okay, and he says a lot of people are talking about it, and kind of speaks to a really strongly held identity and partisan beliefs that really affirms people's beliefs about themselves. Basically, it's turned into, I didn't like what that person said, my fees were hurt, and whether it's true or not, that's the thing that I want to adapt as true. Because there was always this weird thing, like, if you remember in the early 80s, some of you will have very clear memories of this. There was this doctor that went around that was trying to link vaccines to autism, right? And he was eventually struck off the medical field. And even when it was proven that his theories were wrong, and they were peer-reviewed as wrong, there were some fringe dwellers, if you will, that wanted to stick with it, right? And despite contrary evidence to what they're saying, they still stuck with it. And that is where we are today. That's where this group moved to. You suggest that we are profiting off our protest coverage, but in fact advertising represents only about 1% of our revenues. We are being demonetized by YouTube, Facebook, and censor us. Whether we have 1 view or 1 million views, choose YouTube advertising the same is 0. That I will agree with. YouTube does demonetize a lot of people. You say, the other day there's a independent journalist called David Pakman. He's in the US. If you're not following him in some of the things that he says some controversial things. But by and large, he's pretty good. He's a bit of a critic of both sides of politics, but sometimes it goes a smidgen too far. And he was proving some misinformation that Joe Rogan had put out there. And he played the video, right? And he even had in that video that he was playing, he even said clearly, look, these are fringe beliefs. No one actually believes this stuff. And YouTube and Facebook demonetized him for like 75 days or something. So it was something ridiculous. And I remember thinking, that even when you're trying to correct the record, they will demonetize you. That part is true to a degree, but there are words that they use, kind of like coded messages. And the thing is, it's not uncommon for these weirdos to have weird coded messages, or they will hold up little signs to say what they want to say. And unless YouTube physically watches the video, by a person, they won't know that that's how they get around it. There are ways around it. The hiring a Yemeni who had already amassed a sizable YouTube following in his own helped proposal of the Rebel News audience. As Yemeni's recent appearance on Fox News in the US, where he's framed as an objective commentator to Australia's COVID response. No, he's an idiot that said stupid things at a time when we needed sensibility. Why is there the loudest voice always an idiot? Why can't we have someone intelligent step forward and that we all pay attention to? Why does it have to be an idiot? Why do we have to talk about the idiot in the room? It's like that weird uncle that screams out weird things and then you're like, no kids, don't believe. Why are we doing this? Why am I having to air the idiocy of it? And that's the craziness. And then you have to tell the kids, no, if you hear that, that doesn't mean it's true. One time my daughter thought, this is a real story. One time my daughter sat there and thought, you know what? He wants to say crazy things. I'm just going to push it. I'm going to push it and see how far he goes with this. She was surprised to learn that there's no bottom to the crazy barrel. And I was like, I told you not to play this game. We lost our sanity because of it. Don't do it again. It was, no. They're not games I'm willing to win at any cost. Levin is clearly a fan. He told The Guardian he was the best in the company. I'm not sure what your basis is to suggest Australian expansion is due to COVID. I think it's pretty obvious that it has driven the talent of Avi. He's not talented, he's an idiot with a chopping board. Talent requires people of intelligence. He has neither. He's not even entertaining. Even his own people hate him. Ask his ex-wife what he thinks. He said Rebel News does not consider its audience far right. Well, there's another dishonest comment that he can throw in there for the idiots of the day. Traditional partisan labels have lost much more of their meaning in the past 2 years. Australian content, short, stickly produced, videos are often heavy on confrontation with minors, with mirrors in the Canadian style. The two arms also adapt similar strategies to muscle on the space of news outlets. When Yemeni was rejected for a press pass for the Victorian Parliament, now here's what I was talking about. For example, he sued the state government, much like Rebels Canadian News last year. Yemeni, who served in the Israel military, came to Rebel News of his own checkered past. He's been convicted of assaulting his ex-wife, once described himself as the world's proudest Jewish Nazi. A comment has now been since claimed as sarcasm. Of course he'd have to say it's sarcasm to call yourself a Jewish Nazi. That's who they hire. That's their talent pool. Congratulations, Rebel News. You show your hand. Lovely. The rise of Rebel News in Australia on the back of the anti-vaccine and anti-lockdown sentiment raises questions for the major social media companies, which have committed to limiting misinformation during the pandemic. Facebook would not share the amount of strikes it had delivered to Rebel News page, but confirmed that it had removed some content for breaching misinformation and harmful policies. Yeah, not only did they remove it, but they quietly did it. Why? Because they didn't. This would have hit the mastheads at Facebook. They were losing money through removing it, which is why they let it go on for so long. They knew it was making Facebook money too. People who repeatedly breach our misinformation policies will have their restrictions placed on their page. If removals reach it, do you know that my page has been restricted for no good reason? We're heading into election. This happened last election. but it is restricted, and I've proven that it's been restricted. But they do that to the left, to the real censoring. Good luck, idiots. You can do this to me all you like, but you're not going to hide the reality. Yet they will claim they're actually censored. Yeah, show me your restrictions. I have them. Policies have restrictions placed on their pages. If removals reach a certain threshold, we will remove the page. Facebook has never told me why they've done it. I got a small, your page is being restricted. Good news, it's not because of you. Okay, dude, so why? It's a weird thing. I showed the screens. YouTube says it's taken action directly against Yemeni's channel and the main Rebel News account, preventing them from running ads or using other monetization features like super chats. Okay, this means that super chats, if you haven't been on YouTube, there is, in some other media independent circles, they call it super thanks, and you can give it that way. So you can give any amount you like. It's this weird thing. And then they got super stickers and stuff. There's a whole monetization in this that's huge. We have suspended both channels from YouTube. Partner program or channels on YouTube need to comply with the other community guidelines. In order to monetize a channel, must comply with the YouTube partner program policies, which include the advertiser-friendly guidelines. A spokesman says, we periodically remove the channels that are not in compliance with the policies, and the channels that repeatedly violate the policies suspend from our partner program. Now that's interesting. That's what they want to claim, but the reality is that YouTube does make a lot of money out of disinformation. Okay, so who was behind these insane moments of the anti-vaxxer movement? So, check it out. This is how bad it turned into. It was insane. Oh.
This is insane.
So this is organically grown into something big. There are thousands more coming to Canberra.
People are frustrated, people are angry, people are confused, and we're seeing all those emotions play out in the protests across the country.
Social media is a fundamental part of this movement, and it's also a part of the way that they draw new people into the movement.
Spurred by a range of online groups, more than 10,000 Australians converged on Canberra.
Take a look at the go back to the thing I was showing before about how Rebel News played a part in this insanity. Look at all these people. No mask, no vaccine, and pink eye, and watch your kids and your animals. That's what they got told.
Last weekend. The protests were largely about vaccine mandates and COVID-19 restrictions. Some protesters have displayed more extreme views in recent weeks. Some even issued threats to politicians who stood in their way.
We are coming for you. We don't want you to get caught up in the mess, but if you're still in there when we come, you're gone.
While the majority of Australians are vaccinated against COVID-19, a vocal minority is still fired up about various public health measures. It's created an unusual coalition of wellness gurus, evangelical figures, anti-vaccination activists and conspiracy theorists, as well as many Australians who feel genuinely aggrieved by pandemic restrictions and mandates.
Some of them may genuinely be there just because they oppose the vaccine mandates, whereas others are there because they have bought into a whole worldview of conspiratorial beliefs.
There is no clear leader of what's loosely called the freedom movement, and that's created a jostling for prominence and influence. With various
freedom movement, so who do you associate that with? With the likes of what Clive Palmer has written all over his little weird screeds on his billboards. So he too is trying to cash in on this.
Various people acting as self-appointed spokespeople.
My agenda from the beginning was I want the mandates ended.
Yeah! Anti-vaccination activists, sovereign citizen groups who believe a conspiracy theory that the Australian government is illegitimate, and a group who have been involved in Melbourne's rolling anti-lockdown protests, including anti-vaccination organisation Reignite Democracy Australia.
Obviously, they are very vocal, so there's a lot of attention paid to them, but their numbers are very, very small. So we saw a tussle between, I guess, a wing of the protesters, particularly led by former Qantas pilot Graham Hood, who were seeking to put a more acceptable face on the protest and make it more palatable to the mainstream and sort of market it in a way that mainstream audiences could accept.
The protests in Canberra were partly inspired by the Canadian trucker convoy, which began as a pushback against vaccine mandates, but has now crippled the Canadian capital of Ottawa. While the inspiration may have come from overseas, the sheer number of protesters in Canberra forced our leaders to respond.
I understand.
Hold on. Before we hear what Idiot Head says, remember, he will do the best deflecting you've ever seen. Watch this mental gymnastics.
Forced our leaders to respond.
I understand their concerns about these issues. The Commonwealth Government, my government, has only ever supported the mandates that have been recommended. The other mandates that have been put in place by state governments are decisions that they have taken, and they are the governments that they should be raising those issues with.
While some politicians are wary of this protest movement, others sense an opportunity.
The federal government has the power to end the mandates.
So of course Craig Kelly is going to do this. Got to think the guy isn't too intelligent. He genuinely believes in this movement. While others are grifting, Craig Kelly genuinely believes this stuff. If you've interacted with the way that he thinks, I would have to believe that a mental health team does need to have a conversation very seriously about care of Craig Kelly. Now, if you think I'm kidding, play any video you like with him talking about this stuff.
They could, if Morrison wanted to, he could rule all the mandates unlawful. That would crush all the state laws.
They include former Liberal MP Craig Kelly, now leader of Clive Palmer's United Australia Party. Last week, Kelly hosted in his Parliament House office protesters including Graham Hood.
We're walking in, we've been escorted by the police. We've been
remember this little shit show. He invited extremists into Parliament House. That's what he did. So for anyone trying to, I don't know, own me on the idea that that's not what he did, I see your comments and I raise you an idiot. He invited extremists into Parliament, which is not far from what Marjorie Taylor Greene did in the US. These people don't even have an original idea. You think that that's not how the insurrection started? This idiot here is after the same effect. He's an idiot. But he genuinely is one of the idiots. Do not mistake the idiots that are grifting with what he's doing. What he's doing, he genuinely believes. Speak to him. Off camera, speak to the man. He needs a mental health assessment. I've spoken to him on the phone, and yes, he is every part in. He genuinely believes this crap. I don't know why. He's always been a bit weird, but now it's like really weird.
in the Parliament House. We are there going to, all the delegation will sign a letter to present to the Prime Minister, the opposition leader.
The goal for Australian politicians appearing at these events is pretty simple. It's
Who's signing that? He's saying delegations. Who the hell are they? Notice how he doesn't mention a credible name. No one wants to be associated with that. Unless it's like Pauline Hanson and her weirdos.
To capture voters. I would not be surprised, for example, if the United Australia Party gets a bump in the Senate. This is their big pitch at the moment. It's anti-vax and freedom, freedom, freedom. We've all seen those billboards across the country.
I need 10 grand for a soundstage for Saturday. 10 grand. Okay, we've got a 50 grand soundstage for 10 grand.
Can you get me the thing on the quote?
Yeah, I can do.
Just send me the quote.
Oh, so now he's going to fund this. Oh, geez.
Give me the people, okay? I'll try and get that done.
Craig Kelly says he didn't pay for the soundstage at Saturday's protest, but did host a UAP barbecue for some of the protesters.
Show me your
In a statement, Graham Hood told 7:30 that, to his knowledge, no political party has contributed any money to the event, and that he has nothing to do with the distribution of funds related to the protest. It's not just Clive Palmer's United Australia Party flirting with this protest movement. Several coalition figures have thrown their support behind it.
Well, g'day everyone, George Christensen here. I'm at the Convoy to Canberra rally in Canberra.
Member from Manila finally turns up to something in Australia. Are you surprised, people? Are you not entertained? My God. And just take a look at the look on that fella's face. Doesn't he look like the sort of dude that you'd bring home to mum? If you've met my mum, you know that they wouldn't last long.
Canberra, the nation's capital, you know, it's a message. It's a message to the institutions of power in this country, all of them. And that is, we want our freedom back.
This is coalition backbench.
What's the hat he's wearing? What is that weird hat? What's that hat? Nah, man, that's some sort of soft-sid something. I think I've seen that symbol on the, like them soft-sids. Let's do a little Google. Soft-sid symbol. No, it's not one of theirs. So, what did he do? Whose sign is that? He has this weird thing on his hat. What is that? I've not seen that before. That's new. I follow a lot of fringy stuff. You kind of have to when you delve into the who's doing what this week kind of thing, and it's how you get to know who these people are.
Freedom back.
This is coalition backbencher Jared Rennick, who has previously refused to support government legislation until vaccine mandates are abolished.
We should be very proud of the effort that the people are making to speak up to try and end the mandates.
Oh, hold on. Who are you? Never heard of that fellow before. Who are you?
Legislation until vaccine mandates are abolished.
We should be very proud of the effort that the people are making.
So, Scott Morrison, should that guy still hold a job? My guess is no. No. Idiot.
To speak up to try and end the mandates.
Another government critic of vaccine mandates, Senator Alex Antic, appeared recently on the podcast of former Trump strategist Steve Bannon.
Yeah, because Steve Bannon isn't already part of a weird litigation where he's had to hand over all of his communications with the Trump White House. See, that would be an interesting thing where he's involved in the Green Bay sweeper trying to kill democracy, and then our weird Australians want to associate with him.
These people are here at the centre of power in Australia because they want the federal government to intervene in some capacity, and I agree with them.
Having elected politicians kind of...
So now we're just openly supporting people like Steve Bannon that wanted to overturn a legitimate election. Cool, that's what we're doing. Nah, this is nuts.
Consort and associate with those groups obviously opens up some really serious and concerning avenues. It's definitely a balancing act. We do not want people feeling totally unrepresented.
ACT Police were keen to emphasise the majority of protesters were peaceful.
We are looking at a number of persons that have put things on social media that are somewhat concerning. We'll keep looking at those over the next couple of weeks to see whether or not there's potentially some charges that we'll put forward for things such as incitement.
Some experts think it could be difficult for this protest movement to sustain momentum in the lead up to the election.
I think politicians should be very cognizant.
Take a look at that. My Coles car park gets more people on a daily basis. Shit you not. My local plaza gets more people than this. And this is what they're calling the huge movement. My Coles car park, my Plaza car park is bigger than this. And that's on a Sunday. There are more people that visit my Plaza on a Sunday. And they're going to legitimize these Looney Tunes. Nah, man, that's insane.
Represented the fact that this is a movement they don't control and often don't understand particularly well either, and that it could turn on them very quickly.
Yeah, of course they can. They can
Hi, I'm
turn
Lisa.
very, very quickly. Be very careful about who you're dealing with. These people don't muck around with. They will do things that are dangerous. But here's one that I needed to talk about as well. There's also a national security thing that Scott Morrison, where I know that we're about 15-20 minutes off from time, so I'm trying to get through everything. There's a story here I need you to see about ASIO and national security. This will be our fundamental moment. If you're not sure what exactly happened, is the LNP tried to run this scare campaign saying that Labor would be so much better at its relationship with China because they're basically Sims for him. With no evidence at all. They just get to claim it and then put it out there and call that truth. Despite they did the 99-year Port of Darwin deal, despite, you know, how many other deals they've done, the deals with Hawaii, that phone company in China, which has several LNP on it, like, the opposite is honestly true, but that doesn't matter. The reality isn't close to reality. Check this out. ASIOs are all ASIOs.
The difference we're not in practice. Seeking to create the perception of a difference where none in practice exists.
Right, so
for
no difference exists in foreign policy to deal with China with the LNP and ALP, except ALP will not accept weird Rolex watches from the Chinese government and then call them fake. Which is why would a Chinese government give you fake Rolexes, Mr. Tony Abbott, Stuart Roberts and others that never handed them back?
straight out party political purposes. There's something that we've not seen an Australian government do for decades, and it does not serve the national interest by any objective standard.
Not true. Robert Menzies did the Reds Under the Beds campaign. It's been done many times. They did it, Tony Abbott tried it as well, like with the whole Kevin Rudd thing. It was ridiculous. They've attempted this before. It's just an abject failure.
It serves the interests, whatever interests it serves in a party sense in Australia, it in effect only serves the interests of one country, and that is China. Because our body politic, the national interests are served by our body politic having a unified position on an issue as critical as China.
A boost. Manufacturing on the Gold Coast has received $17 million.
Okay, so that is a key issue. What he did on national security never should have been done. This isn't like something you should mess around in, for several reasons. But if you're unsure about it, hit me up at any time and I'll answer those questions. But what the LNP done here is appalling. They're xenophobic and they know. Why? Because it wins them weird votes. And anyone not paying attention wouldn't know the difference. They wouldn't remember the Rolex watches incident. I follow politics closely and Mum had to remind me the other day. Nuh-uh. It's there. They do these things knowing full well that people don't have a full recognizance of what's going on. But now we're going to move to when photo ops go wrong. So it got weirder. Like, I want to say this isn't. We thought it was weird when Scott Morrison was like, "Hey, I can wash people's hair." We thought we'd stop the photo ops for a little bit. Turns out, not so much. Scott Morrison's welding incident. Check it out. Turns out he shouldn't be welding either. Should keep his creepy hands off women and not weld. Apparently this is not how you do it. I've never even used any of these tools, so I'm not to say, but this is not how you do it. Who remembers that incident where Trump looked directly at the eclipse? That's what this kind of reminds me of. It's funny, but it's dangerous.
On the tools once again.
Oh, right, so you used to be a tradesman before?
No.
His blinding insight.
Did you catch that? You used to be a tradesman before. There needs to be a follow-up question. What kind of tradesman? Like, is this like a real thing or a fake tradie or a photo op tradie? Someone needs to ask. Someone pretty please ask Mr. Morrison. I want to hear that one. That's going to be a good story at the around the kitchen table.
Right. You said here?
Yeah, you gotta do it.
Now, surely he should regret that. It's bloody blinding he did it. I can't believe he did it. If you don't know how stupid that was, I don't know if you really realise how insane it was to do it. It was a bad choice. I wouldn't let him weld anything in my life. But why would you want the Prime Minister welding? And where did he get the idea that not only had he been welding, but he'd been a tradie before? Someone should have asked a follow-up question like, what trade did you do? Where did you do it? I'm interested, Mr. Morrison. No one asked, because this was one of them weird... I would have to imagine that this was a welding company that's very LNP friendly. They never rock up to a place that's the standard place. Like that hairdressing thing, totally planned. That woman is going to run as a candidate for the LNP. Real thing. It's real. That's what they're going to do now. So, do not think for a minute that this is like... not a safe space for Scott Morrison. It wasn't for his eyes, but it definitely is evident that Scott Morrison should not be touching any tools. Do not give Scott Morrison an opportunity to touch tools. But back to Scott Morrison's xenophobia. Watch what he did here. The government's News Corp on the attack against it. Now remember, Trump had the same playbook. So he went into that election. This is like a Murdoch thing. You have to wonder, you do. You have to wonder if Scott Morrison can't do this weird scare campaign. And maybe he should stop the photo ops for a while, because now it's getting dangerous and deadly. If he stops the photo ops, not sure what else he can do to get elected. Suppose I would try less dangerous ones like meeting people and kissing babies or going to the pub, but that's typically not very popular either. Remember when he met the bushfire victims and he tried to force the lady to shake his hand? Or he could do what he's meant to do and tell us what policies he wishes to enforce if he wins the election. He can tell us about how he's going to get the bigger bill going, the social media hurt my feelings bill, the defund Medicare bill, which I definitely think is on the agenda, and make it legal for kids to drive forklifts. That is all he wants to do. The worst of the worst ideas. The social media hurt my feelings one is the funnest of them all. Or maybe kids driving forklifts. You decide. He'll do more Chinese contracts and then blame the ALP for him like he tried to on the Port of Darwin. And then try and justify being nasty to the Home to Bioella family. And that's where we are. So be aware, this is what they do. The Liberal Party figures worked in News Corp to bring Australia under the influence of Xi Jinping regime in a staggering plot that would have been seen by a Chinese enterprise purchase in a major Australian company that would have brought Australia onto the orbit of one of the world's most brutal, aggressive regimes. All ordinary Aussies been given a say. China would have been able to secure the control of a strategic Darwin port. So it did get the ability to control the Darwin port. The Liberal News Corp plot, leaving Australia and the US military movement susceptible to Chinese monitoring to this very day. The primary architect of the plot was former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, who posed the hard line of anti-communist while exaggerating extensive secret negotiations with Xi Jinping. The extended Chinese economic intervention of Australia, and he dubbed the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement chapter, which Labor was like, don't do this. And when we said don't do this, they were like, oh, you're being xenophobic. Really? You're going to play national security games and you're going to be like, you're being xenophobic. Outrageous. And that's the game that they're playing. Well, they got secret contract deals with Hawaii, the phone company, and they've got this thing on WeChat where Gladys Liu can run around and misinform her voters on a very prominent Chinese app about Labor policies. When you've got her taking major Chinese money and Julie Bishop doing the same, and they've all got their hand into the Chinese money pot, but they're going to accuse Labor of that. Okay, dude, nice flex, but no go. But my funnest of all is James Patterson. If you didn't catch Insiders, check this out. I know time is running short. I promise I'll get to as much as I can. Okay. I think you got to go like that, and then you go like this. 2 minutes. Oh.
The Prime Minister called him a man. Right, let's talk about Richard Marles then. The Prime Minister called him a Manchurian candidate. You disagree?
Oh, of course he's not a Manchurian candidate, and the Prime Minister very quickly withdrew that comment. I note when Anthony Albanese made the same comment a day later towards the Prime Minister, he didn't withdraw it. So I think the Labor Party's outraged.
So I never heard ALP make that claim at all, but James Patterson just gets to make up stuff as he goes along.
David is confected. I mean, I think what we know is happening here, David, is that Labor Party has the most left-wing leader since Gough Whitlam. They're very sensitive about their weakness on China, and they're very uncomfortable with that now being pointed out.
None of that's true. And if we're as left-leaning as Gough Whitlam, God help us if that's considered a bad thing. What an idiot. At what point was that going to be a bad thing? Everyone loves Gough Whitlam.
We'll come to that, but do you have any concerns about Richard Marles?
No, I don't have any concerns about his loyalty to Australia. I think he gave a very bad speech in Beijing in September 2019.
What was wrong with the speech?
Well, he proposed that there should be closer military cooperation between Australia and the People's Liberation Army. That's the same People's Liberation Army that...
Oh, watch him get owned. Weird by David Spears, but he gets owned. Watch this.
It's out there aiming lasers at our Royal Australian Air Force pilots right now.
Well, he said in that speech that Australia and China should explore, quote, political cooperation and even defence cooperation. What's wrong about that?
I think we shouldn't be cooperating with what has become a very serious strategic adversary that is trying to coerce and intimidate Australia.
Because a month after he gave that speech, the Defence Department issued this press release announcing the next round of military exercises with China, Operation Pandaroo. These are military exercises your government, the coalition government, began. How come it's bad for Labor to suggest it, but okay for your side to do it?
They were long-standing pre-existing arrangements, and what Richard Marles is suggesting...
They began under the coalition government.
Yes, but they are long-standing, long before Richard Marles' speech, and what he was suggesting is we should take it up an extra tempo. We should increase it even further on a political and military level.
I'm not sure if you're verballing him there, Senator. I've got the quotes. He said, our starting point has to be that we respect China, deeply value our relationship with China. We must seek to build it, and not just in economic terms, but also through exploring political cooperation and even defence cooperation. He's not saying up the tempo on military
I think it's very clear he was. Why else would he
How is
make
that clear?
reference to it? If all he was saying, David, is we should just continue what we've already been doing, then why did he say it at all? And why has it never been posted on his website? Today, the only place you can read Richard Marles' speech is on my website, not on...
Wait. He's going to get owned again. Watch this. It's amazing.
Yes. Don't you think that that's a bit strange?
Should the
Don't you
Prime
think
Minister,
that he's obviously embarrassed about something in that speech and doesn't want to talk about it?
Should the Prime Minister post everything else speeches he gives on his website?
I don't know. I don't run the Prime Minister's website. It's up to him to post what he wants to post. But I think it's strange that Richard Marles hasn't posted it still today.
Should the PM, perhaps post his speech he gave to the Christian Churches Congress on his website?
That's a matter for the PM, David.
It's not just homes that are feeling a boost.
That is come on. I know who David Spears is. Yeah, you find a golden nugget in every weird moment. These people, but I think that that's part of where we are. So keep in mind that their idea of what makes a good story is deflection, and every time they called on it, they think the mainstream won't pick it up. Every once in a while they do, and when they do, you have to highlight the greatness of it. I think that this election cycle is going to be brutal. I want everyone to get out there and volunteer at their local ALP branch. There isn't every real chance that there will be horse trading done within these independent groups. You cannot let a group of fringy crazies be the one controlling the rhetoric around what's happening right now. We need to take back our voices and not let the fringe group be the overarching voice. We don't need them to say things like what they are with their pink eye convoy. We need them to be truthful and honest with everyone. What Rebel News did in disseminating that much disinformation needs to be called out. Now, I invite you, along with everyone else, that if you see anyone promoting that kind of rhetoric that you know is disinformation, to call it out when you see it and to report it, because this has cost real lives. This isn't like there's a left and right anymore. There's like this extreme side that has this death culty kind of feel to it, and I want you to know that it's no longer something we can ignore. This is a huge problem for us all. We aren't in normal circumstance. You cannot click your heels 3 times and say that there's no place like home. This is home. These anti-vax, anti-mask weirdos are in our homes now, and they're disseminating information that is not truthful. So now's the time to say, we're not going to put up with you. You are not one of us. You're behaving disorderly, and you belong, with the sheep that you're following. In truth, that's how they project the most, is they will call everyone else a sheep while they're acting like checks notes sheep. Look, I've had a wonderful evening with you. As always, I think your input is valued, and I'll go through and read any comments left. I think our political leaders need to hear you the most. You are valuable, and I trust that I will see you next week for another week of This Week in Politics. I need you to know that I appreciate the fact that there are people that come back every week. Thank you, guys. Bye. See you next week.